Thank you, Dr. Mace, for joining me again. It's so good to see you.
I am glad to be here. Thank you so much, Eric.
Awesome. Last time we did speak, if you remember, we were talking in detail about leading yourself first. And we brought up towards the end of that last podcast the idea of chaos and leadership. And you noted, rightfully so, that that would be the topic of the next podcast. Today, I'd like to unpack what leaders do when clarity disappears and how we can find it again without losing themselves or their teams.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. It's so interesting how our brains are even hardwired to crave clarity and to move towards it. In many ways, though, this is the cautionary area in that we'll be so driven for clarity that we sometimes can gloss over or miss what's right in front of us in the chaos. So often it's in those moments of chaos when really growth is happening. So we want that certainty, and our brains are kind of neural wired to want certainty, to want clarity, to want consistency. However, sometimes what it does is it creates such a structural framework over our perception of reality that we don't see things that don't fit inside of it. So it's a blinder in many ways. So step one for me is to welcome and step into the chaos and be okay with that, because we're so good. For me, this is the plight of the expert. The expert is so good at knowing what they know, and they lean on that. However, that knowledge becomes an Achilles heel. Our strength overdone becomes our weakness. And so I've seen too many good leaders, too many good founders who are so good at what they do that they ineffectively they end up running 180 degrees from the direction they truly want to go, because, as the old saying goes, what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah.
So, and that's where growth happens, outside of our comfort zone, in the chaos, outside of the clarity, outside of what we think we know, there's growth. So step one is to allow yourself to be okay with not only the lack of clarity, because that's more of the mental component, but then there's an emotional component that goes with that. The angst, the anxiety, the uncertainty, the self-doubt that creeps in. Learning how to step into that is the first step in my mind in really powerful leadership. Being okay with not knowing. It's that open mindset you hear people talk about so much, and having that even when it doesn't feel good. Step one.
So I was curious, in step one, you talk about when there are people who have to be okay with not knowing. Do you think that people tend to grasp plans or certainty?
Both, yes. Plans and certainty. The plan that creates the certainty. But what I find that this does is so many leaders then create organizations that don't innovate. And they don't change. They're not as adaptable as they need to be, because they keep referring back to their expertise and what they know and their own certainty. And the realm of innovation and invention is outside of that. And so I find that many organizations quickly, especially in today's environment, become antiquated because they're not flexible enough, because they're not adaptable enough, because they're falling back into the secret to their success. However, the secret to their success got them here. That's not the path forward. That was the path to here. And when you keep doing the same thing that got you here, you're going to be stuck here.
Yeah.
So being able to, and that's, again, the hard thing is it goes way beyond the certainty, and clarity goes way beyond simply certainty or clarity. It becomes identity, right? I'm the expert. I am. It becomes this self-concept, this identity that then sneaks in and becomes, really becomes a governor in a way that keeps us from really accelerating the way we could, because it's the I am. So many things will go through the founder, go through the executive that don't need to be. They're now becoming an obstacle to their organization's growth. They don't see it that way. They don't realize it. But when they finally step outside of themselves and look at the role they're playing, they realize they're down in operations, getting stuff done, because their operational prowess got them here. And so they have this playbook. The certainty is, okay, I'll show up and tell you how to make things happen. Absolutely undermining the success of the organization. So they're running I've seen organizations running $100 million company like a mom and pop shop, right? And one guy running around trying to do everything. Now you need to evolve. And this is why we talk about leading yourself first. Yeah, this is so key. You're not going to run your organization unless you can lead yourself. And that means changing. That means stepping into the chaos, stepping out of the clarity, and allowing yourself to be in that moment and to be okay.
Yeah.
Even with even when there's a squeamishness inside of you, right? And you feel like you're uncomfortable in your own skin, those are the moments. And to be okay with that, pardon me, that's the most powerful leaders I've worked with and seen are the ones who can do that.
Yeah. And I'm curious, there are in some cases, there are people they get promoted into leadership roles just because of the opportunity. Like someone's leaves, right? And then there's no one else to take the place. So Eric's going to go, right? And that's just by nature. Sometimes it's just, hey, you're in the batter's box, so you're the one that's going to go. Other people get that role because they deserve it. They did well, or they exceeded some expectations, or they got brought right into it. And specifically in the first case where unexpectedly I get picked to be a leader, and in the third case where I get hired directly into it, I'm really curious. In some cases, leaders can crumble under chaos because they go into those roles expecting either a lot of functional manager support. So all of the organization will come down. Oh, I've got you. If something ever goes wrong, we'll take care of it and we'll help you take care of it. And that does happen. And that's a good thing. In other cases, there's no plan. And the leader's like, well, as long as nothing goes wrong, I probably will be okay. And then this is where that certainty comes in, where people are looking at other leaders and they're saying to their manager, everything's really bad right now. Everything's going south and everything's due yesterday and who knows what's going to happen. I'm curious if the people that see them leading well follow them a lot better than those who are watching the leader stumble across the whole entire issue.
Well, it's such a great question and point that you bring up. Again, so many leaders get promoted into leadership because they're really good at what they do. However, when you're promoted into leadership, it's a totally different skill set, and one that you may or may not have any business being in that role. But that's just kind of the way our system is set up. You're a good producer, therefore we're assuming you're going to be a good leader. And the hard thing is, when you're a producer, there's often certainty. There's a process, there's a system. You're less in the realm of humans and more in the realm of tasks. Now you evolve to leadership and you're more in the realm of humans and less in the realm of tasks. And when it comes to humans, you can throw consistency out the window. People are not logical. They're irrational. They're driven by I think of it as different brains, right? The caveman brain takes over. When things don't go our way, we get frustrated. And your job as a leader, doesn't matter how logical you are, your job is to create engagement, to de-escalate people when that happens, to help evoke the best version of themselves, and to really stand in the middle of chaos with people. Not to insist on clarity for them, because your insistence will push them further into chaos, but to stand in that moment of chaos and let them de-escalate, let all the rubble fall. And then from that place, now you're in a position to move forward. But being able to be in that position, in that moment when chaos is reigning, and not try to muscle it, not try to force people. You can't make anybody do anything. And that's one thing I see leaders going to beat their head against the wall, if only. And they focus so singularly on trying to force the behavior of other people and fail to recognize that people are behaving and reacting in relation to them. And you can't change others, but when you change the way you show up, especially in the face of uncertainty and chaos, if you're running around and you're full of angst and you're scrambling, which I see leaders do, others react to that. If there's uncertainty and chaos, but you're grounded, you're calm, you're poised, even not knowing, people react to that and they rise up and they stay calm and they stay poised. And then from that place, it's about evolving a vision. Okay, everything is shifted. Now let's talk about what the vision is. Where are we going from here? And so often, I think that's one of the things I see so many leaders miss is they even if they keep their ground through the chaos, they don't evoke a vision in the way that they can plant that vision in other people. because
Yeah.
that's the thing that brings out the engagement. That's what brings the heart in other people, is feeling like they're part of something larger. So if as a leader, I am reacting to the chaos around, I'm not going to instill that kind of confidence in the people around me. I'm going to evoke instead, and I see this in so many organizations, evoke panic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even though, and then I'll think they're the problem, not recognizing that 100% of the time it all comes back and it mirrors me. So if I can know how to keep my seat, know how to be grounded in the face of, and I think so much, just like think about in the military, the best commanders are the ones who can be in the face of war and not react, not scramble, not melt down, be calm, be consistent, be confident. People will follow.
You're pointing out a really good point, the tie between the emotional maturity, I'm going to use that word for lack of a better one, and the ability to indirectly control the response of the people around you. I think that that's a pretty good tie, because I've seen people at my work who have a problem with somebody that works for them, their manager, and they react emotionally to the situation. And then they get upset when the person they're leading retorts in some way, reacts to that, right? And then they come back to me and they say, I can't believe Bob yelled at me. And my response, and let's just say in this situation and in this scenario, Bob is younger than Sam. Sam's the boss. And Bob comes back and he yells. And they say Sam comes back to me and says, hey, Bob yelled at me. I can't believe he did that. Can you believe he did that? I'm the boss, blah, blah, blah. And I say, yeah, well, here's the thing, right? You're the leader. You're the one who has to lead by example. And you're the grown-up in the room. Not literally, but metaphorically speaking, you're the grown-up in the room. You're the one who is expected to have control of that situation. Be calm in the moment. Think, don't speak. Try to carry people and give them the idea of which way to go. And I think a lot of times people do forget that, just like you pointed out.
I was going to say, it's interesting because not only did Bob not just yell at his supervisor, but he yelled at every supervisor he's ever had, right? So this is a deeper pattern, and to recognize that's what we're doing. So there's a block and tackle that happens, that when you say he's the adult in the room, metaphorically, well, it's also very literal, because we recapitulate the family of origin and every dynamic at play. So I learned to behave a certain way with authority figures very early on. And that was never scripted. It was my experience and how I learned through stimulus and response to behave in relation to my father. And that got ingrained in my relationship with the principal and with the coach and with the boss. And now here we are decades later. And so when he's showing up, the boss is showing up a particular way, evoking, to recognize he's a screen for everybody's authority issues and authority template, authority role relation. That's what's really going on. It's much bigger than Bob yelling at you. No, Bob is yelling at his father, at his principal, at the policeman, at the coach. Everything that he has learned through the course of his life that has helped him create an identity is about his relationship with authority. And now you're coming and showing up the way you do. And of course, you're evoking this transference. You're evoking this in the other people and say, I can't believe it, and thinking that your authority is enough to get them to change. This is why it's so important, I think, to have strategies in how you lead, not letting your style dictate. When you let your style dictate, you're going to have a certain level of result. And when that doesn't work, you're going to fall into blaming the other person. Can you believe Bob said this? No. Can you believe you evoke this out of Bob? When you take 100% ownership, accountability, and responsibility and recognize that it's you who's creating this dynamic, then you're in a totally different place. And you have more power, even though it's kind of painful to recognize it's you, it's not Bob.
Yeah, for sure. And I think people need to remember that there are certain types of leadership power we have. We have authority, we have this power that we have just the virtue that we're in our leadership role. We have coercive power. We have reward power. We have all these different types of assets at our disposal to help try to give people purpose, motivation, and direction, as the Army calls leadership. And when you bring up this life template of how you react to certain situations, I want to pull on that for just a second. I remember when I was in the military, there was a sergeant next to me who had a soldier that was causing an issue. The soldier was younger and came from a background where his father was a police officer and fairly authoritative and strict in a way. And when he got to Germany, he reacted to the freedom of that environment. Dad's not around, drinking age is younger, girls are pretty, they like me, all these things, right? And
Freedom,
it caused
freedom,
problems.
yeah.
First freedom, and it caused problems, right? The young guy didn't know really how to handle all of that freedom. And the sergeant got super angry at everything that he did wrong. Not that, I'm not condoning going out and having a fun time, but there's a way to handle them, like you said. And I told that guy, I said, listen, you're never going to get results from that troop by yelling at him and by getting angry at him and then chastising him and taking something away, like his weekend or his movie pass or whatever it is he had planned. Because that's exactly where he came from. He's going to rebel against that. That's exactly why he's doing what he's doing now. And so think about your leadership style in a way to give him motivation to do better, reward power, whatever other type of power you can use. But that particular authoritarian approach rarely ever works when it comes to people who come from that thing that they're escaping.
Yeah. Well, it's like, do you light the fire under people or do you light the fire in people?
Mm-hmm.
And when you light the fire in people, you have loyalty. You have people who bring their heart to the game, people who want to be better. When you light the fire under them, which is coercion, you get people who will show up and help you win the battle, but man, they're not in it. They're not.
Yeah.
Their heart's not in it, and they're doing it because they feel like they have to. Very different. Very different.
In your experience, have you seen that chaos is seeded in these minor events that just eventually spiral out to be this big cyclone of problems in an organization?
I love you bringing it back to chaos because we want certainty. And there goes our attachment to our leadership style is certainty, right? And it's an attachment to our identity, which is by extension, our leadership style, all of this, the way I show up because I'm successful, because I'm the sergeant, because I'm the leader, whatever the narrative is, we attach ourselves to that. And there's certainty in that. But because of that, then we end up kind of creating chaos sometimes or undermining the result we want in our quest for certainty. And when you can let go of that, let go of your certainty around what you've done that got you here, your attachment to your identity, needing to be right, needing to be the one who has the answers, needing to be the wise one, whatever the story is, when you start to let go of that and enter into that place of not knowing, which is, in my mind, you can say not knowing, it'll drive anxiety, but it's also deep curiosity. When you step into that place and really look at this other individual who's struggling in their relationship with you and you're showing up with anger, and we want to say it's the other individual. What if you had curiosity to look at, what if I did something different? Let me just try some different tactics and see what impact it has on the other individual. And what we know to be true through positive psychology, it's the fire in people. How do you light that? And the whole reward notion it's not a transactional thing. I give you the movie ticket, you get the weekend off. It's the recognition. That's what people really, underneath it all, humans, we're social creatures and we need to be recognized and we need to feel like we're part of something and we're okay through the lens of our immediate social environment. In fact, hardwired in, our survival is based on that. So when we feel like no matter what we do, it's not okay, and we're trying to, like this youngster, trying to individuate, trying to find who he is, because finally he has a little bit of freedom to actually explore and never learned to do that before because it was always under the thumb. When we take that off, if we try to replicate that, like you say, it's gonna implode. What if we could do some things different as a leader? What if we could step into that chaos with the individual and then help point out and be that figure who could point out what's going right? Because what we know, why you hear so much about things like gratitude and generosity, it's with your thoughts, you create the world. So if you show up noticing what's going right, more of that happens. Yeah. And this now kind of takes us back to our reticular activating system, right? Our cognitive framework, that when you make a commitment to start, well, I think I talked about this before, perhaps when I decided I wanted to buy a Jeep Wrangler, I started seeing Jeep Wranglers everywhere. As soon
Naturally.
as I made the decision, this is the thing I want, I started seeing it.
Yep.
When you make a decision, you're going to start to pay attention to what's going right. You'll start noticing that. And as a leader, there's this quality I call executive amplitude. Everything you do is magnified and expanded and expressed across the entire organization. So when you start to pay attention to what's going right, I love it. I have an organization right now I work with, where the leader is really good. The founder at seeing flaws and will point them out. The one time he points out something that's going well, it has a resounding, huge impact. People stand prouder. People
Yep.
feel more confident. They show up earlier. It does something in them. We have this deeper need to feel a part of something. And authority works. That's the hard thing. We don't want to get rid of it because
Right.
it's hardwired in as well. I grew up with a father. I like that kind of guidance and leadership, but also overdone, it becomes a detriment.
Yeah, it's a lot of weight. I mean, I think when the weight of leadership is tricky if you're not careful. You can either take on too much. Maybe it's not having to do anything with discipline or correction of an attitude, but maybe it could be a leader who just doesn't want to necessarily put in the time to learn a particular thing. Maybe it's a leader who doesn't want to put in the time, which causes issues, right? Because then they won't know how to react to something. Maybe it's a leader who just wants to do everything themselves, because if they can't do it, they don't trust anybody else. So there's that level of trust they're not giving to the people and not getting out of the way. And so when people get into those situations where they're leading, if it's expected, then maybe they're prepared for it. But then again, there are so many variables which can create this foundation for a good leader or a bad leader from everything that we've talked about. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, going back, we had the first step. Did we have a second one?
Well, the first step is to be able to be in chaos, right? And that was the thing. So in the uncertainty that comes with that, it's our relationship with uncertainty and really our relationship with that part of ourselves that doesn't know. And the hard thing is, I go back, I'll trace it all the way back. When you came into the world, you didn't have software, right? You had hardware, you had a brain, but your mind didn't have patterns developed. And you started having experiences. Based on those experiences, you started to form your software, which is what? Your self-concept, it's your ego identity, it's your personality. Eventually, it becomes your leadership style. Well, as we cling to that and do that repetitively, it becomes the certainty, which undermines us. So the thing is, if you're going to let go of that, the question is, and step truly into that moment of chaos, that moment of not knowing, that moment of uncertainty, the moment of curiosity, if you're going to step into that, the question is, step 2 is, what's your vision? Who do you want to be and what impact do you want to have? Because most people don't have clarity of that. They just do what they've always done. And then you end up showing up with this recruit and you keep berating them and yelling at them and you can't get the result you want. And you think they're an idiot and they don't get it. And we don't realize that, no, okay, this is about me not having the result I want. It's not about them. They're doing what they do. My job is to be a master of unleashing the potential of these individuals. And the tactics I'm using are not doing that. It's not on the recruit, it's on me. So the second step, one is the ability to step into chaos, the ability to be sizzling your own juice, right? To be uncomfortable, to not know. Step 2 is to start to have clarity. Who do you want to be and what's the result you want? Is what you're doing. And this is the beautiful thing, because it can entice you to step more into the chaos. Because if you're certain and you have clarity about how you're showing up, yet that is not getting the result you want, and maybe it's the result with your recruit, with your direct report, with your spouse at home, with your children. It doesn't matter. As a leader, it's all the same block and tackle. It's all the same neural circuitry at play. If you're not getting the result you want, it's not about them. It's about you and about having clarity of the vision of who do you want to be? What's the impact you want to have? Because what you're doing is simply playing out the software that you installed when you were 3 years old, 5 years old, 7, 10 years old. You laid down all this software. Beautiful. Now you've got this DOS programming that is vastly outdated, but it's driving how you show up. And in the same way that this kid in our example is relating He learned to relate to his father, who was a policeman. And now he has that's his software programming. And now he's playing it out relative to the sergeant in this new situation.
Mm-hmm.
He's just playing out the old software.
Yeah.
As a leader, your job is to upgrade the software. You must upgrade your leadership. And that doesn't mean focusing on other people. It means understanding yourself and knowing what those drives and patterns are, stepping into the chaos and allowing yourself to upgrade, to do things differently. Because with your thinking, you change it all. And if you change your thinking over time from I have to be harsh and aggressive to be a good leader, or I'm trying to think of what the languaging might be, right? There's one way to lead and it's my way, whatever it is. That is the outmoded software, because if it's not getting you the result you want. And to recognize that when you start to change your beliefs, your thinking, your behavior changes, your results change. Beliefs drive behaviors to get results. And if you're not getting the results, it's not the external individual that's the problem.
Yeah. And if I'm doing introspective to myself as a leader, why do you think I find it? And just for the record, I don't find it. I'm just using an example. But why, as a leader, if I'm doing introspective, I'm listening to you, I'm saying, okay, I've got to learn to lead myself first. I've got to look inside. I've got to do X, Y, and Z. And I've got to be critical of me. I got to look myself in the mirror and say, you're not doing as good about this particular thing as you could. Why is that so hard?
It's so interesting that 100% of the people I work with know that they're good at being right, because they made it here and they're right. And I'll fall into that as well. I think when I have a discussion, a conversation, an argument with my wife, it's because I'm doubling down on being right and I'm not listening. And somehow we believe with the 7 billion people on earth, we have the market. We're right. We get it. But it comes back to, I think it's the thing that keeps chaos at bay. Chaos is uncomfortable. The uncertainty is uncomfortable. I have certainty in the structures and the software. This is the thing that I think is, for me, fascinating, that 99.99% of the people don't control their mind. Their mind controls them. And in those moments, why it's so difficult is we have to put that on. We have to change the relationship with that part of ourselves and let go of being right. But the hard thing is that ties into my self-worth and my self-concept and my value. And it goes all the way back to when I was 5 years old, learning to get my attention needs met, right? So you think about this, why this is so important. When we came into the world, the only thing we needed to survive was attention, right? Attention, love, which means food. Attention, it means shelter, it means clothing, it means everything that a parent does for us. Our survival is at stake. And we learn how to distinguish ourselves with the other little humans around us. If we're the oldest, if we're the middle, if we're the youngest, if we're in a group, we learn how to find our identity in that group in a way that distinguishes us and gets our attention needs met. And that gets wired into our neural circuitry. But rest assured, our survival is at stake in the mind of the 2-year-old. So now here we are, decades later, and our brain is still wired as if our survival is at stake, right? And that's what starts to happen. We talk about that caveman brain taking over. There's a belief, right? You think about when we go into fight or flight mode. Why do we go into fight or flight mode? It's about survival. Yet, to what extent is our survival truly at stake on a daily basis? It's not. Yet we still go into fight or flight mode. Why is that? It's not physical survival anymore. It's survival of the self-concept, the ego, of who we believe we are. We attach ourselves to that. And as long as we do that, we're okay in our own head. As long as I'm the responsible, hardworking, people-pleasing individual, I'm great. But then in that way, we become so conditioned that our success is conditional. Our success is only based on when the outer world that we perceive validates those drivers that we've created. When the outside world that I perceive validates my self-concept, I feel good. I get a swing in my step. I'm the man. When the thing I perceive doesn't validate that. So now here we are. We have the sergeant who has this self-concept, and suddenly what he's doing is, by this one individual, he's pushing, and he's not getting the result. it's invalidating his self-concept. And that's why anger is creeping into the equation. Anger is usually, now anger is an emotion, but what we do with it, it's interesting when anger drives our behavior. It's not usually as effective as when choice drives our behavior. And they're two very different things.
Mm-hmm.
When anger drives our behavior, we'll justify it and rationalize it and say it's only because of us. It's because of our neural programming and our attachment to having to show up a certain way. But when we, it's so sneaky, right? When the mind controls us, we'll say it's the external world. That's the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And that, for me, I realized that the biggest skill to help combat falling into a trap of emotional leadership, which in my experience, and I don't know that this is the case for everyone, but in my experience, emotional leadership has very rarely paid any dividend to me. It's always caused more problems because, generally speaking, when you're acting on emotion, you're acting in such a quick fire way that you realize you shouldn't have done it. You shouldn't have said it. You shouldn't have looked that way. You shouldn't have written that thing. Whatever you just fill in the blank.
Well, can I make a quick little interjection here?
Yeah,
so
sure.
When you say emotional leadership, I get it, but right away I'm like leaning in with curiosity. Like, well, look at the assumption is that it's a negative emotion when we say emotional leadership, because positive, if you come in with, kindness, that's an emotion.
Yeah.
Come in with a concern, caring, those are all emotions. And that has a very different result than anger, frustration, irritation, or guilt. I work with so many leaders who are driven by guilt because they do it because they should. They learn to be the family hero, the oldest child in their family. Guilt drives what they do. They always say yes to everybody, and they can't figure out why they're always overextended.
Yeah. You're absolutely right about emotion. I mean, I just did it, and I hope the people listening understand how easy it is to immediately associate the term emotional leadership with Eric got mad. And so I tried, my point was going to be that I really try hard to control that. And I learned that was the most powerful thing for me as a leader, was to recognize that brief moment in between the situation starts and my reaction. There's a brief moment there where I can slip some logic, some understanding, some reason into how I'm going to react. And in terms of a chaotic relationship, we've talked a lot about the practical side. We've talked about the approach. And I like to look at image for a moment, the image or imagery of leadership. There's two leaders. The scenario would be there are two leaders. Leader A goes into an organization, something bad happens, there's a crisis. There's a plan in place, some type of plan that the organization has in their organizational process assets drawer. Here's how we're going to react to that. And the leader, rather than going in calmly, calculatively, if that's even a word, with calculation, going and getting the plan and enacting the plan, just reacts to it and appears to be disorganized and not appropriately planning, not appropriately ready for this particular crisis. Then you have leader B, who does not react quickly. They wait, they go and get the plan, and then they go and enact that plan, and everything gets sorted. Now, in both scenarios, both can have a positive outcome. They can both navigate that crisis with some degree of safety, I guess you can say. But in terms of that, how do you get organizations to try to develop leaders to be the latter rather than just being the
100%. For me, it comes back to what the term I used earlier, caveman brain. Okay, we have three brains. We have the caveman, the robot, and the genius. Now, the robot brain is it's the brain of the expert within us. When we do the thing we've always done, right? On autopilot, you get behind the wheel of a car, your robot brain takes over. You don't think about driving. It's all so second nature. You're not even paying attention to what you're doing. That's robot brain. Caveman brain is that reactive brain, right? It's the limbic system. When the limbic system takes over, we don't have our higher function available to us. It overshadows it. We don't have the executive function. We don't have genius brain available. So caveman brain chases away genius brain. And what we're talking about now, genius brain is where you have the ability to think clearly, creatively, constructively, where you have logic. It's the only brain where true logic is available to you. This is why, for me, self-awareness is so important, to recognize and ask yourself, what brain's in charge right now? If you're at all emotionally reactive, now emotion for me, I'll circle back a little bit to what you were talking about with just emotion and how it plays out in us. I grew up in a world where big boys don't cry. I'll give you something to cry about. Never let them see you sweat. So I grew up in an era where emotion was not okay. And I think that's part of the bias that you and I both bring to this conversation that we need to be cognizant of. Emotion comes from our attachment to an idea. It starts with a concept, right? We have an idea or a belief about how things should be. And when things are different than that, that evokes the emotion. So it really comes from our attachment. And for me, I love it. It goes full circle back to chaos. One leader can stand firmly in chaos and has exercised that mental muscle of uncertainty, of chaos, can be in the middle of it, and it doesn't overwhelm. The limbic centers don't hijack him. Caveman brain doesn't take over because he's practiced, or she's practiced, just being okay, not being okay in that moment. And then if you can be okay and not let your own reactivity take over, then you can access the genius brain, and you can slowly, methodically, one thing at a time, go through and do the thing that's going to most effectively implement a system, or do the thing that you've trained to get the result. When you don't do that and you immediately react, not to the thing that's happening, but to your perception of the thing that's happening. And that's, I think, the thing that when you talk about that moment to be able to pause, I love it. There's, just to break it down and understand, there's the thing that's happening, but you're not reacting to that. You're reacting to the decades of construct that you bring in your perception, and you're looking at that thing through your cognitive lens, which is based on your whole lifetime of experiences. You're not seeing the thing, you're seeing a perception of the thing, a cognition of the thing. And that's spawning a reaction in your body, and then out of that reaction in your body, then you're behaving. That's when caveman brain is in charge, and being able to sever that moment is absolutely key to recognize. That's how our being is working. There's not the thing, you're not reacting to the thing, because I would say, what's the proof that you're not reacting to the thing? If I was indeed reacting to the thing, then we would all react the same to it, and we don't. So it's all of what we're bringing back to self-leadership. Lead yourself first. It's what I'm bringing to it, the way I'm looking at it. And what if I could let go of my cognitive lens and just see the world as it is in this moment? Then it's a puzzle to be solved. Then it's not an attack on me. It's not something I have to rail against. I can keep my ground. And that's the thing. Can I access genius brain in the middle of this assault, this perceived assault in the moment? Because I'll bring that same perceived assault to a meeting. I'm in a meeting, I say the thing, and nobody responds to it positively. And so what happens? I start to get a little frustrated, and then I get an edge in my voice. And then I can't believe these idiots don't understand the brilliance I'm bringing to the meeting. I got edgy, and I start to shut down a little bit or something. It's the same thing, the same mechanisms at play, right? Whether or not it's a firefight or it's just a small thing, somebody rolls their eyes, and I personalize it.
Yeah.
And that's so much of it, I think, is we personalize the world around us, and we fail to recognize that there is that buffer, and it is purely a perception of the thing around us. And when you understand that, you give yourself space to be able to react or respond with intention versus react in this emotionally driven way. Genius brain versus caveman brain.
So let's say that we are in an organization, we've got the crisis, we've successfully paused, and we've got our way forward, and someone on the team tends to be a little bit on the chaotic side. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, so a couple of concepts I think that have been very useful in a lot of organizations. Number one is recognize there's a quality called neuro mirroring, right? So what it basically says is that our cognitive state and our emotional state is people react to it. Not only react to it, but what's the word I'm looking? It's contagious. So first of all, if I'm escalated and I come into a space, you're going to escalate if we're not paying attention. The work is, this is why it's so important to be comfortable in the chaos. So if I walk into a state and everybody's escalated, if I can keep my ground, there are a couple key strategies you can do to de-escalate others. Now, in a firefight, right? Sometimes what they need certainty. The brain craves that. So to be able to say, I've got this, follow me, whatever that looks like, can be very helpful to help them because they're freaking out. They don't see the direction possible.
Right.
Now, on a less pressured situation, the reason folks will often escalate, it goes back to those ancient drives in our humanity. We don't feel heard, valued, listened to. We feel like we're an outsider in our society, and our survival's at stake. Not a conscious, cognitive, logical thing. It's underneath the surface, right? That's what's playing out. So simply the act of stopping, right? If you can keep yourself grounded, they're escalated, and just turn your attention, repeating back what they're saying. Yeah. When you simply repeat back what somebody says, in that moment, it's a demonstration of empathy. They feel heard, even if what they're saying is the wildly incorrect. It probably is. They're in caveman brain. The first thing you must do is keep your own state of mind, stay in genius brain, stay present and stay aware. And number two, get them out of caveman brain. And the way to do that is simply to return your attention towards them. What I hear you saying is matching and mirroring too. Not only matching and mirroring what they're saying, but sometimes you can match and mirror their physical posture, because you want to demonstrate alignment. When you demonstrate alignment, they feel connected, they feel heard, they feel, so this is more, again, less of storming the front. It's more in the day-to-day. When you watch somebody who is not carrying their weight, they're continually frustrated, they're out of alignment more than anything. And sometimes, sometimes what they need is a strong hand, but sometimes if that's our automatic go-to and we show up that way, we can actually push them away and do more damage.
Yeah.
One of the things we know, things we know, I'll just say it again. If you want to de-escalate others, it's not solving the problem, not having the answer, which is something we can be really good at. Don't solve the problem, don't have the answer. They don't have the capacity. They're not in the place to even access their logic. Number one, we have to get them into that place to access their logic. So now, step one, we can be in our own chaos. Now we can be in chaos with them without reacting to them. Now, can we just say, hey, okay, what I hear you saying is, in a dispassionate way, and they say, no, that's not it. Great. Help me understand. Let them vent, and you validate that you're hearing them, not that they're factually correct. And watch what happens at some point. And you've been there, right, Eric? I have too. When somebody gets it, when I'm frustrated and somebody stops trying to explain things to me, and they just are there with me and they get it. They get what I'm saying. It's like a bubble pops.
Yep.
Yes, that's it. Then the de-escalation happens. Now they have access to their genius brain.
Yeah. The point I was going to say is that we've got so many different things that we could put into this toolbox of leadership. And it's surprising to me in some cases just how many people get into leadership roles. And when you symbolically open up this toolbox of things that they are going to use as to be a leader, they find that it's quite empty. And then they get confused as to why they can't manage a particular situation or an individual or a project if it's really complex, or chaos for that matter. And it's these conversations that we're having both on the first podcast, the second one, and whatever the next one will be. It will be great. These are great bits to put in that tool of yours to help manage these things out. And I think people think it's really, really hard. I mean, do you agree with that? Do you think that people think it's really hard to manage myself, to get control of my own feelings about how I'm going to react to things?
Well, the hard part is coming to the realization and the truth and being honest with yourself. That's the hard part. That it's not the other people, that they're not a bunch of idiots. That's the hard part. When you start to just look, the self-awareness, step one, when you have that, then you open the door. But ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier to say everybody else is the problem. And it's harder to take complete, I think of it as having the oar, you're rowing the boat. Ownership, accountability, responsibility for yourself and for for the impact you leave. That's the hard step. Once you overcome that and start to recognize that, we all want to believe that we've got it all dialed in and everybody else is the screw up. When you start to open the door and give yourself a break and recognize that you're flawed, everybody's flawed. We have a certain way we've learned to do things. And if we believe that programming, if we believe that's the way, that's our mind controlling us, not us controlling our mind. And it's really about learning to change that relationship. So it's funny, but you're right. I think
Yeah.
it is hard.
It
It
is.
doesn't have to be. It's about letting go, but in that moment of surrender, in
Yeah.
the same moment in between the perception and the reactivity, right?
Yeah.
And it requires you to recognize it's not them, it's you. And
Yeah.
that's hard.
I wonder how many listeners can, and you yourself, of course, can relate to this. And as I kind of wind down, I think about the moment I became a senior program manager of a very complex, large Department of Defense contract. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I was terrified about the idea that I had to lead a project with hardware engineers, software developers, configuration managers, all these quality control people, resource management, financial analysts, contract analysts. And in my mind, before I remember this like it was yesterday, I told my wife, I was like, I have no idea how to corral all of those people and to get them moving into a particular direction when I don't know what direction we're going in. And I say that, and I want to kind of put emphasis in the spotlight on how complex I made that myself. Because actually, 5 years later, after it was all over, I realized that the hardest part of leading that project was not the tangible aspect of whatever the role was. A software developer can develop software with or without Eric. A hardware engineer can do engineering with or without Eric. It was learning to give people the space to learn, to be quiet in the moments when they were having a chaotic issue. And we can define chaos as to whatever, but maybe it's something as simple as I don't like Bob. Bob's too annoying. You know, that can turn to chaos. And that's a little teeny storm that could spiral into a hurricane. And I found that when I got done with the project, it wasn't the project that was hard. It was not knowing how to manage people effectively with so many different personalities. And luckily, I had the wisdom and the foresight to get through it with success. But many people need to realize as they're listening to this that if you're facing a really big, complex thing like that, maybe not pay so much attention to those tangible things and start thinking more about the people part, because that might be harder than you think.
So well said. It's not the process. That's not the difficult part of leadership. It's the people. And that's why when I mentioned earlier the step of understanding the vision, who do you need to be relative to them? And you don't need to be the master of all. You don't need to have an answer to everything. You need to show up with presence, with curiosity, and with a general intention to help them be better. Because if you show up as a leader and you help everybody on your team be better and you become that to them, the guy that when he shows up, I'm better, you've got it made.
Yeah.
You've absolutely got it made if they bring their A game. But so many leaders divert to what? The thing that caused you so much grief at the beginning. You were a content expert. You knew how to do a lot of things. And now it's like, how do I manage all these people? It's a totally different skill set. And you have to exercise it very differently.
Yeah. Yep. There's a saying that I mentioned to someone the other day. I made this up. Leaders create other leaders. They don't create followers. And I think a lot of people think, oh, when I'm a leader, I'm a boss. I'm going to have people that do what I say, or I'm going to lead a big team and they're going to be proud of that stamp of leader on their chest. I'm a program manager or whatever this. And kudos to you for getting there, but don't let it be the last place that you are, because if you end up creating a bunch of followers, what's in my terms, in Eric's terms, success is building other leaders to take your place. And then we may have talked about that the last time we spoke about, carrying on your legacy, looking back and saying that's being run because of the people that I helped develop and they're running it now. And I'm gone, I'm doing something else.
I
Where do we
just
go
want to
from here?
reiterate that really quick. Leadership is creating other leaders, not other followers. It's creating leaders. I think that is profound, and I think that's just a great pivot point in this podcast for folks to just rest on. How are you creating other leaders, and what's that mean? It means how are you helping others become better and others make good decisions and others lift others, right? I mean, imagine if we could do that, be the person, the force that not only got people to follow you. Most people are so self-focused. We want to be the leader others want to follow. Now, what if we were the leader that left others better, left them more confident, more secure, more able to be in chaos and be okay? That becomes contagious through the organization. Yep. That's how you create a world-class organization, with leaders that create leaders.
Yep. And it
it
certainly begins with yourself, right?
It begins
this entire conversation, chaos, clarity, leadership tactic, conflict resolution, whatever they might be, are only going to be successful because you lead yourself first. Is the title of Dr. Mace's new book. So I hope everybody goes out and gets their copy. Dr. Mace, I am so proud to be able to talk to you. And again, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. Are we going to have a number 3?
I hope so. This is a fantastic conversation. And, I think you and I both are along the same mindset that this is more than a conversation. It's a mission. How do you help? The world needs it now more than ever, for individuals to have some tools to be able to elevate and recognize it starts with you.
Yeah,
it starts when you lead yourself first. When you do that, and when you can upgrade your leadership from the inside, like software programming, to give yourself the upgrade, you can show up in a way that you'll be proud of. You'll create a legacy. You'll create more leaders. You'll do things right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for joining me again. And we look forward to the next conversation, which I'm sure we'll get underway here shortly.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Eric.